Chandra.
Okay. Oh, was that ours?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was ours. Oh, thank you. Thanks so much.
I called Mark, I told him I'd call him after the meeting. I mean, I could understand, 'cause I'm sorry.
You guys ready? Okay, good evening and welcome to the meeting of the CBC Accountability Committee. My name is Chandra Moreira Benito. I'm the chair of this committee. Today is Monday, December 8th, and we are getting started. So we're going to start with a roll call. Judge Nelson,
Present.
Commissioner Chura,
Present.
and Commissioner Mason.
Present.
And I, Commissioner Moreira Benito, am present. I sent out the agenda. Are there any additions anyone would like to make to the agenda? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
And a second? Wonderful. And let's vote by unanimous consent. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Abstain. What's the word for nay?
Nay.
Okay. All right, so we'll move to public comment. We don't have anyone here from the public, so we will skip that. We'll move into old business. So in the last meeting, we discussed that I would send an email with some questions to the city about the discipline settlement decision. I've not received a response to the email, so I'll send a follow-up email after today's meeting. But one update, and this will kind of go into the first item under new business, is that I think that John and Sharina will be giving an update about this in the full commission meeting on Thursday, but they did meet with the chief, and the chief and them did discuss it a little bit in that meeting. And one thing that the chief reported was that the collective bargaining agreement has limitations on how long after an incident happens someone can be disciplined. And so they said that they had done the settlement to kind of because they thought that the union would have a strong argument against it. And so they wanted to avoid potential arbitration and mediation. And so that's why they did it. So I did then look at the collective bargaining agreement for both the CPPA and the FOP, and that was what I sent in the email with the agenda, was the kind of notation of where in the collective bargaining agreement they talk about discipline, and I did not see a time frame listed for those. They did in the collective bargaining agreement say that like once an officer is brought up on charges, the investigation and discipline is supposed to happen expeditiously after that. But my understanding in like these investigations is that the complaints were made and then they were just housed in HR and that charges weren't brought up for those officers. And so I did ask John and Sharina to send a follow-up question to the chief to ask the chief like what part of the collective bargaining agreement she's referring to, because I don't know if there maybe was a previous collective bargaining agreement where that was listed and then it just kind of carried on even if it's not explicitly stated. So I don't know if we do have two former police officers here, if you have any insight on that. But so I did ask them to send a clarifying question, and then I'll also follow up to the law department on the questions that I sent over.
To the chair, it used to be every 3 years they have another vote on the contract. And at one point it was, when something was discovered, so it might not have been discovered right away, but if it was discovered you had 6 months to complete your investigation per the contract, so they might have changed that a little bit, but
Okay.
I'm not aware of it. Did they give you a reason why the cases weren't investigated by the division when they were happening, and not just by City Hall? I mean, they should have been investigated by the division. There was some stuff in there with different situations where officers allegedly assaulted other officers and things of that nature. Any idea what, did you get anything on that? I know she wasn't the chief at the time, but.
Yeah, I know, Trina might be able to, once she gets settled, might be able to offer some insight. I think my understanding of, my memory from when they discovered that the reason why they were sent to HR is because if it's, employee versus employee, then like the city's supposed to take jurisdiction, so, I'm not exactly sure why or how that argument was made. But Trina might be able to shed some more light on that. But yeah, I think it's a good question of like why some of those complaints weren't sent, why they were sent to HR and not to IA.
I've never heard of that. It should have been investigated. Some of those cases should have been an IA, and I think officers called down to IA to check the status of it, and they got the runaround. So there might be more to this than
Yeah.
just sending it. I've never seen anything go to City Hall, and that's probably why they sent it there, so nothing would happen with it.
Yeah, I do believe that, that the Inspector General, the Public Safety Inspector General, when these cases were found, she was going to do an investigation. So I don't know the status of that investigation, but I assume that we'll get some information about how and why that happened when she does her investigation. So we'll give Sharina a second to get settled, but I think she might have some more information than I do. Because I think kind of what you're saying too is like, at what point is it considered discovered, right? Like if once they send it to HR, is that the point where it's discovered?
No, it was discovered long before when
Yeah.
an officer made a complaint. That was.
Yeah.
I go there.
Okay, a couple questions. One was, when we found these complaints investigations over in HR, did the Division of Police say why they were sent to HR rather than them just doing an investigation themselves?
Because of the type of complaint, it was related to like the employment and workplace policy. I can't think of the name right off the top of my head because I'm kind of still rushed over here. But it was a type of complaint that it was. They automatically send those types of complaints to HR. And so that's why they were there. Why they sat so long, I have no idea.
I know that Commissioner Chura, who was the commander over internal affairs for some time, said that wasn't a practice. Like that sounds like that wasn't the practice when you were over internal IA.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, you'd have officer on officer quite often, and we do an investigation, and perhaps both would be found guilty of some charges, or just one more than the other. But there's definitely something with that, sending them over there like that. Division does the usually the investigation, and they do on a couple of them. I was reading. John provided some better documentation on a lot of the cases. I haven't read them all yet, but just a couple, and it seemed like the division's still involved. When they meet out the discipline, and none was done there. And I don't know if that was deliberate or not, but if it went to IA, they have a certain time limit to get things done. And if it was logged in their logbook, which is some of these should have been, they should have been doing something.
Yeah, great. And then the Public Safety Inspector General is doing an investigation, a review into this issue, right?
Yeah.
Do we have any idea of a timeline of when that will be completed?
She has not given us a timeline yet. I could definitely follow up to see if she has one.
I think that would be good. The other thing about the 6 month, so I was telling them that the chief told you about the 6 month limitation, but I was telling them that I did go through and read the sections on discipline in the collective bargaining agreement, and I did not see anything about a 6 month timeline for discipline, but Commissioner Cherry did remember that being something that was in there at some point, But I guess one question related to that is, you know, for CPRB cases, those investigations often take much longer than 6 months. And so if with that logic, would none of those cases be able to result in discipline? I haven't seen, but some of those disciplines happen a year or more after the complaint because of the length of time that OPS, the case, like the kind of backlog of OPS cases.
I'm not sure on that, if both parties would agree to an extension or not. But usually 6 months is a pretty long time to investigate, minor things of, minor complaints and things of that nature. If it's a criminal investigation, sure. If it's something like really bad where they're protecting them way back in the day, gambling or protecting drugs or stuff like that, the FBI would be involved. It might take a lot longer than that, but eventually it'll be done. And you wouldn't even know about that investigation if you were an officer until you're arrested or indicted or what's going to happen.
Right. So I think that maybe I told them that you were going to send a follow-up question to the chief. Yeah, about where in the collective bargaining agreement or if it's in a previous agreement that, basically that practice has continued. We would love to know where that is. And then also, if you could ask about, we know that OPS investigations often take longer than 6 months, but I haven't heard of like that preventing the imposition of discipline. So if you could ask about that.
Sure.
Any other kind of follow-up questions to that? And then I think, Commissioner Chair, I think you raised a good question that we all have about why these cases went to HR. I think that we probably will get the best answers from the Inspector General report, and so Shannon, do you mind reaching out to them?
No, I think
if there's a timeline.
definitely reach out for a timeline.
Okay, great. Yeah, and then if you guys, between now and our next meeting, if you have some time to go over those collective bargaining agreements, and see if you guys read anything differently than maybe I read, and maybe we'll also get some additional information from the chief, and we can circle back to that. Any other discussion points or questions on that? Okay, great. So the next item on the agenda is Judge Nelson, you had sent an email to the commission talking about some of your ideas and concerns about what type of cases you think that the commission should be focusing on, and so I brought that discussion to our committee. So I'll turn it over to you.
No, I just asked a general question so people can, they can weigh in. Each commissioner can weigh in terms of what they think about them, what we should prioritize.
I think it might be helpful for anybody watching the meeting who maybe didn't receive the email to hear you.
And I don't have the email, but my concern, for example, I know we have a lot of issues. We have a right to review any and everything. Some things the department looks at, for example, their uniform issues. Maybe the person's out of uniform, the button's not right, or things of that nature. And the department makes it, there's a level of discipline that they go through. And if the department says, okay, for this you get a slap on the wrist, or you get a letter in your file or something like that, then that, for me, that is not a high priority. The department handles it good. Now, if the officer shoots somebody, which is one of the, when this entire request for the Department of Justice to come in, it was based on the Cleveland police engaging in a pattern of practice of excessive use of force. So my primary concentration is going to be those cases that focus on excessive use of force. There's some other things that have come out as the commission and as the consent decree have evolved, but Shura just talked about one of them, that is we have officers attacking each other and that kind of thing. But that comes to us too. But I want to make sure that we really are focusing our time on and our attention on those kinds of cases that were the sum and substance of the request for the Department of Justice to come in. One of the good things that has happened, one of the things that we don't brag about, is that the significant reduction of excessive use of force cases. And that's something we should be proud of. And I think it's because of the change in culture, maybe training, it may be scrutiny, maybe because of the profile attached to it. But but that's a level of success, and I think we should be bragging about that. But when it comes to when I raise it, it's so I can hear from other commissioners as to what they think, not just my own perception on that, but so we can hear from the other commissioners in terms of making sure we spend our time. We really focus our time on the things that are important, and of course, we want to make sure that the culture changes, and it seems that the culture is changing. Now, I'm not saying it's changed completely, that's a work in progress, but it's substantial progress.
Do you have something, Commissioner Chair?
Yes, through the chair, uses of force might be lower, but however, perhaps the guys aren't doing anything anymore, not being as proactive as they used to be. We would get out there and we'd look for stuff. Now I don't know if they're that active. I mean, if we're gonna look at that, we should look at, look at some statistics where we could compare it, maybe, before and after, and see what we come up with. If that's, that's all great, we can put it out there, uses of force are down, but are they still out there doing their job, going out there and looking for people, being proactive, or are they just responding? Put the lights and siren on, they go on your way, nobody's there when you get there, take the report, and you're done. And you stay out of trouble, I reckon. Potentially.
To the chair, Councilman, you're talking about the criteria of incidents that, that's what you're asking we should be investigating or looking into?
Yeah, we got a whole list of departure letters on certain things. As I was looking at some of those departure letters, some of them were, and I don't want to diminish them because you have a violation, but some of them, I think the department, the chief safety director's decisions, they handled it fine. And some of the things I was looking at was some of the concerns about time. Where the officer took time they weren't entitled to, but the department handled that. They handled that. So I was perfectly satisfied with the officer handled. Those are the things that, I think their judgment was appropriate judgment. Now, you raised another point. I think it bears, maybe the monitors can look into that, can extrapolate some data about why, about reasons behind the reduction in excessive force. That'd be a good point for them to look at. But in terms of just the general public, we don't get the complaints. Now, there may be a reason behind that. And I think that you raised a good point. Maybe the monitors who have the resources.
Right.
They have the resources.
Staff and everything.
They have the staff. Maybe they can take a look at that and see what they can extrapolate.
So a question, so if an officer is not being proactive, is that leadership? That means that there's a failure in leadership.
So possibility, for sure.
So then would that be something that we would look into, or is that something that we could, during our monthly discussion with the chief and the safety director, we would inquire?
That'd be a good point as well. Those are good points. So you all have a certain amount of experience, and I think that we need to hear from your level of experience often. So for me, I've raised it so I could hear what you guys think about it. Not only that,
It could be a failure in leadership to some extent, but then on the other hand, some guys are still out there proactive and involved in different things. So I'm not saying that everybody, but I'm just wondering what the cause is. Is there a correlation between some of this? If they're just not being proactive, just going and
because their whole thought is, if I get out here and get in trouble, then X, Y, Z is going to happen to me. So
right.
if I don't do,
where's the leadership then,
Yeah.
right?
So
they got back them.
and you probably make a good. I'm sorry, we sort of ignored the chair. I'm chairperson to the other commissions. You probably make an excellent point, and I guess there's this balancing act, where we don't want the George Floyd's kind of stuff to happen, but by the same token, we don't want the thugs and criminals to get the to take advantage
Right.
of the officer's fear that they'll be before the commission,
Someone said they're trying to get an intercom
you
in
know.
the building.
Yeah, I
maybe
hit the
something
6X.
as
It should've
extraordinary, just, so I got your
I
point
hit
there,
it.
but, you know, and I agree with
Tell them
you,
to call
we
me.
should have the commission, the monitors, take a look at, examine this, examine, is there anything behind this other than the fact that we have this, very active commission and, and the monitoring, and the consent decree in place? Are there side effects? Are there some other contributing factors other than the existence of the commission and the consent decree?
Through the chair, there's another comment. There's like warning signals that the supervisors have to look at, and uses of force are one of them. If a guy has, he's proactive and he has so many uses of force, they have to kind of look at everything and almost do like an investigation on the officer. So, I know there's a lot of different variables there, but I just want to bring that up too, because I know there's like a certain level where it triggers where the boss has to look at the officer's record.
I think it's an interesting, question. Sorry, I'm getting text from some committee members who said they were having trouble getting in. They said they were gonna email me what they wanted to say in their public comment. Sounds like people are stuck out there. That, I think your question is like, is the reduction in use of force that reflect a change of policy on how they're doing use of force, or does it reflect a decrease in activity in certain areas? And so I think, one thing for where questions like that are handled in the commission is, I think in general, like policing activities, I'm not sure like what committee would handle that. It could be like a training issue or a policy issue. But I don't think we've received any like formal complaints about that, but I think if it's something that you think is worth looking into, I thought the idea of having the monitor examine that's a good idea, and maybe it's worth the discussion for the full commission of kind of what is the general approach of the CDP right now and how people feeling about that. I think one thing I wanted to kind of clarify is, so when we say the CPC looking into these kind of different disciplines, there's kind of three ways that we look at disciplines. I think the way that what we have been working on recently, and hopefully once we have a staff, we can get this built up, is a catalog or a database of disciplines so that we can see trends of the disciplines that are happening, and also whether those disciplines are within range. I agree with you. I don't think that we would have a lot of interest in looking at a uniform violation in terms of like really much beyond noting maybe a trend and if that's going above or beyond what this matrix says. The other two ways that we look at cases are evidentiary hearings, and then also once we get the Brady-Giglio list up and going, referrals to whether to put someone on the Brady-Giglio list. I guess I'm curious, Judge Nelson, if when you're talking about that where you'd like to see us focusing our attention, can you kind of walk me through which one are you talking about? You don't want to see evidentiary hearings, or you have questions about what types of cases we would have for evidentiary hearings? Are you talking about maybe restricting what kind of cases would go on the Brady-Giglio list?
No, I was looking at one of the responses from I think one of our other commissioners, who I don't think she's on this committee, but she responded. It was trying to get to a consensus about what our overall objectives are. Now, and where we focus in order to make sure that we're ultimately achieving the primary goal for the existence and the creation of what the commission we're sitting on, and looking at the monitoring looking at the monitoring committee over the consent decree. And the reason is because there's always people complaining about this much money has been spent on this much money has been spent on that. But I think that we've been effective. But now there's another question: is the effect? What are the contributing factors to our effectiveness? Is it because people know that we're gonna be looking at these big cases if there's a major violation, or is it now that, and so that, because they know we have this, we're vigilant, and they know that there's a committee or a methodology and a place they can go where they know that it's going to receive some justice if injustice occurs. And I think that that's why we came about. And as we look at what comes before us, there may be some issues that need our attention based on that. I recognize that we have some other issues in here that and I do not diminish them, but say they're a little less serious, but they are violations. I mean, there's certain protocols that police officers have to adhere to, and we see them in some of the departure letters and some of the other issues that come before us. But some of them, when the chief and the safety director make a decision on them, some of them are departmental issues that the department does a good job in handling. Uncontroversial, but they're still part of our overall agenda. So that's what I was trying to raise. That's the question I was raising. I want to raise it so I can hear from the commissioners, and especially as it relates to arriving at a consensus. As Commissioner Coleman raised in response to mine.
So I guess I also wanted to clarify, so are you meaning just focus in general, like in general what's our goal, or specifically with relation to what this committee and the commission is doing in terms of discipline? Are you talking about what kind of cases we take or what goes on Brady Giglio, or are you saying you're just looking generally wanting to kind of understand what our goals are generally for reviewing discipline?
See, I don't want to be a gotcha committee.
Oh, what?
The gotcha committee,
Okay.
where we're looking for minor infractions. The commission is created to deal with excessive use of force and its prodigy, making sure attitudes change, that the relationship between community and officers become more collaborative, so that people can develop the trust between community and officers, which helps in overall crime prevention. And as opposed to us being the gotcha committee, looking at an officer's shoes wasn't shined right, his buckle wasn't, his brass wasn't right. I mean, I don't really give a hoot about that. But that does not mean the commission shouldn't. That was just my own personal
You mean that should be something that the chief should be dealing
the
with,
chief and the safety
and not the
director.
commission.
Right. Focus. We want to make sure that we are hitting but we have to make sure we have a consensus on that. And that's, I like to hear from the other commissioners. So I put it out there, and then we can, and I was trying to find Commissioner Tara Coleman's response. Let me see if I can find it again. I took myself off the, somehow I knocked myself off my.
So it sounds like you're kind of speaking more generally and not necessarily about the evidentiary hearing process or the Brady Giglio process.
No, not talking about the evidentiary. I just want to make sure what we hear in our evidentiary hearings are things related to the primary purpose for which we were created. But it's only my perspective. There are other perspectives in most commissions. So yes, to make sure that it's clear in terms of what I was expressing, yes, I really want to focus on those infractions that really impact the quality of life and the relationship between officers and community.
Sure.
And it seems that we're doing that, but the gotcha stuff, the uniforms, and whether the person's shoes are shined, and that kind of thing, I think that the administration does a good job in handling.
I definitely don't think that we would hear a case like about someone's uniform, so I am in complete agreement with you on that. I think that, thanks for explaining that and for initiating the conversation. I think that one thing is I do agree that I think the big cases where we're talking about use of forces or potential use of forces where someone was injured or killed, I absolutely agree that that would be priority number one for us. I also, though, do think that I think some of the areas that I think that are important to look at are areas that have been identified in the consent decree as issues. So search and seizure, bias, use of force, And so, like, to me, those are also areas, even if maybe they don't rise to the point of, use of force that left someone injured or dead. Like, I also think that can be part of a pattern of policing that leads to potential, like, cases like that. And I think the other area, so I think those are definitely the things that I would be flagging and looking at in terms of identifying cases. I think the other area that I've heard from the community a lot and also from other officers is where there's a disparate treatment of officers in terms of discipline. So some of the feedback that we've gotten from officers is feeling like some officers get treated one way and another officer gets treated another way in terms of having similar infractions. And so to me, I think that is also a priority for me, and I think has been for the commission, although we can always change that, that looking at is discipline applied fairly. And so that might, I don't think we would ever really look at again, like a uniform violation, but even for lower levels, if certain officers are getting disparate treatment, we want to make sure that that's being addressed.
So to the chair, so in other words, what the things that we should be looking at is the Fourth Amendment, violation of the Fourth Amendment, the Miranda rights or the violation of that. But if they're being, far as an employee, if they're being discriminated against, so that is the area that you're looking at. Not as if they are the shoes or whatever, but if the disciplinary, so that is a discriminatory practice.
Sure.
That is what we should be looking at on a whole, not as an individual.
Correct. Yeah, so when we're creating the discipline spreadsheet, part of it is to help us identify cases. As we get that filled in, and then we can just add new cases to it, it will help us be able to say, hey, this is interesting. Like this area is, it seems like a serious violation. We might want to look more at this. Or, hey, this seems really outside of the matrix, so that might be worth looking into. But also, kind of the point of, even though it's a little painstaking to look through all of the disciplines from the last 2 years to put them into the spreadsheet, is to help us identify potential patterns, like you're saying, where are certain officers, all the officers that were, they received discipline that was below the matrix, is there a pattern to that? Because that is something that has been raised by officers and, officers who were previous commission members before. So that was kind of my thought. But I think it would be helpful for the public is for us to be able to articulate what are the types of cases that we intend to look at for the evidentiary hearing, so that everyone is kind of on the same page and the commission feels like we all are on the same page about what we want to look at. I think the only area where it would potentially go beyond what our stated priorities are when a community member makes a complaint. Because right now our policy in our handbook is that any community member complaint results in us requesting the case file and therefore doing a case report. And so that is the policy that we have in our own rules. And so that is the other area where you could see some complaints that are maybe not within those areas.
Let me, if I may, Madam Chairperson, here I found the letter. One of the things I was saying that as I was looking at the Brady Giglio list too, and other issues, and in my letter for the general public, this is what I said to the commission. When I, along with Attorney James Hardiman, threatened to send a letter to the Department of Justice on Cleveland NAACP letterhead, we were going to do that, even though there was a lot of pushback from local leadership at the time. Hardiman and I were the branch's lawyers at the time, which sort of caused city officials to respond more positively after some initial reluctance. We finally sent an official letter to the DOJ. Suffice to say, I'm thrilled at the impact of the commission on realizing its major purpose, the reduction of our officers engaging in a pattern of practice of excessive use of force. Now, as it relates to Brady Giglio and others, I'm not interested in any review of nonviolent behavior. Now, this is my perspective, in which disciplinary departure letters have been issued, which are more than 2 years old, and did not result in the citizens' rights being violated. I'm prepared to accept the good judgment of the safety director or chief regarding those non-intrusive matters. That goes back to the Fourth Amendment issues you were raising. A good example would be discipline in misuse of sick time. For my review, the safety director and chief, with the participation of IA Internal Affairs, have issued proper discipline in those matters, and I believe that our time could be more valuable handling acts of violence or threats of violence, intimidation of whistleblowers, and acts that could be considered violations of the Fourth Amendment, i.e. withholding of exculpatory evidence and similar examples. To be honest, if I had the same discussion with other commissioners, and where no consensus has been reached, at least we've had thoughtful conversation on the subject. And I remember talking with you about it, talking with Tara Coleman and others about it. These are just my thoughts, and I'd be willing to further discuss this at the appropriate time, even with officers, even with the people who, even with the guys who come to our meeting. And I think that part of our we want to make sure people have both officers and citizens have a right to weigh in on some of the things that we're considering. Even if it's an informal matter. So I really want to hear from we had the 12 of us. So, sometimes some of us have dominated conversation, but their thoughts amongst our peers, I like to hear from them. This time, of course, only 5 of us here. So this is a good place for that discussion, and I appreciate the comments that people have made. So that was it.
To the chair, I think that if a citizen comes and takes the trouble and comes and files a complaint with us, it has to be investigated. We're on investigatory. The OPS can investigate it. If it's already investigated, we should take a look at it for the sake of that citizen, no matter what it might be. Or if any other commissioners approach that they want us to take a look at something in accountability, we could take a look at and see what we think and then go from there. But that's my comments on it.
Commissioner Thad, I'm so sorry. You've been waiting for a while. I'm so sorry.
I hope I remember everything. So I'll just say, I don't think anyone I was spoken to on the commission believes that we should be hearing cases about uniforms or shoes or anything like that. We should be focusing on matters that are important and vital to the consent decree, but also we are here to protect the community. And included in that community are the officers. So if there's an officer who is at work that believe they're being discriminated against, harassed, or just believe that the culture is unsafe for them, we have a duty to stand up for them as well. So we do have the authority to reverse excessive discipline as well. We have to look at that. So if there's a person that, may think they have been retaliated against and receive excessive discipline for speaking up or out against something, we want to hear that too. We want to know about that. If they believe that they're being discriminated against, if they believe their workplace is unsafe for them, if they think that, we don't want people, no matter what their race, gender, sexual orientation, to feel like they're not welcome within the Cleveland Police Department, we need to address that. And the people on this committee you guys, we get all the disposition letters. All because we get all of them doesn't mean we have to address all of them. So we get them, that's just a formality. And it's up to you guys to look at them and weed those out. You guys have the power to weed those out and select the ones that you want to look at because they've reached that standard or that bar that you guys think, the commission should uphold. So it's all up to you guys. And if some other commissioner suggests something and you feel like it doesn't reach that, they suggest, hey, this guy didn't have shiny shoes, I want you to look at this. You guys could, in this committee, could smack that down and say no. Mm-hmm. It won't move forward out of this committee. So that's up to you guys. So I just suggest to continue looking at those disposition letters, to scan those for the violations that you think should be addressed, and just kind of look over the ones that don't meet that standard. Let's see. Oh, and I did figure it out. So the IA, they are the ones that sent those complaints to HR because they determined they might have violated some EOC or some employment rights or some employment policy. So they are the ones that sent that over to HR.
So was there an investigation? They should have conducted an investigation.
You want the settlement? You want the settlement?
No,
When they see that it's a certain type, I'm gonna send you guys, I'm gonna look for the spreadsheet that, Chris Violent sent over. And there's, we talked about it in a 2023 meeting before, I'm gonna send a link to that meeting. They're the ones that sent those particular cases to HR due to them being like, employment related cases
And they sent him without doing an investigation.
without doing an investigation for HR to do it because they considered it an HR matter.
Man, are you talking about the settlement agreement?
No. Those HR cases that
Oh,
were.
okay,
yeah.
all right, okay.
I mean, the settlement agreement was one of those.
Okay.
It
I
derived.
just want to make sure I was.
Oh, the settlement agreement, yeah, it wasn't settled at that
Oh,
time.
yeah,
So,
Yeah.
it wasn't settled at that
Or
time, but that's now the new settlement.
yeah.
Okay, all right, make sure, I just want to make sure I was on the same page.
Yeah, that was on that list.
So, do you think that it would be helpful for maybe us to write something up that says these are the, areas of interest that, because I think so far it's been kind of unspoken, and kind of informal of what are the areas that we want to focus on for evidentiary hearing. The Brady Giglio is kind of like the law establishes the criteria for that, so it's separate, but for evidentiary hearings, other than if one of those is a citizen-made complaint, but then the other areas, I think I could write up a little summary of what, kind of what we've talked about, what the areas of the consent decree are, and send it to this committee. And we could always review it to then send it to the full commission so that everyone is on the same page and there's some clarity around that. Do you think that would be helpful?
But, to the chair and the commission, I was reading Commissioner Combs' response to what I've written, and she was indicating how maybe that we don't have clear-cut goals. It doesn't appear we have clear-cut goals of what we want to accomplish and how we want to accomplish it. And she indicated the charter is our only authority and outlines our obligations, but it's not set our priorities or strategy for how to accomplish what we determine needs to be prioritized. So maybe it's a just trying to figure out what our strategic plan is. I think that's what the other thing she used. She used that keyword. Maybe we need to talk about a strategic plan because we're accomplishing certain things just via, and maybe as we look into as we continue to evolve, that maybe it'd be good to have a strategic planning session, and that could include what you raised, and could include what's been presented tonight.
To the chair, we've had these talks for years now, even when Jason was here, about a strategic planner. In the past, it wasn't in our budget to acquire one. We did determine that we are able to possibly get one now, but right now, due to the current staffing issues with the commission, right now, we're just trying to keep the commission afloat. We're really just kind of bare bones right now. And we expressed to Commissioner Coleman that when the time is right and we have the capacity to work on a strategic plan, we will. Our former interim executive director, Alex Nordine, he did draft. The city has RFP templates. So he did complete that RFP template. It is ready to go out to receive RFQs for a strategic planner so we can review those requests and hire someone to get that done. It's just that I don't see the need of doing that at the time where we don't have a staff, we don't have an executive director to execute anything. But when the time is right and we hire our staff, that will be one of the top priorities.
But to the commission and to the co-chair, I would direct the question again so I like to hear from what my colleagues have to say, my other colleagues, and unfortunately,
I'm a colleague as well.
Fortunately, we're a small sample of the commission. So we've heard from, I've expressed mine, you've expressed yours about what we need to do and what we can do. I'm not sure we're quite as hamstrung, and we're at the end of the budget year, but as we talk to other commissioners and they weigh in on these issues, and even officers and other people that the general public weighs in on this issue, I think that will help us. So strategic planning we have skills and we have skill sets within our commission. We have some serious skill sets. And I think that as we go through with priorities, the budget has been developed, the priorities are developed in the budget. And I think that from what I've heard, I'll stop saying what I think, but what I've heard and what has been expressed in writing from other people, there are some strategic planning is it's very, very, very important. It's not something you do as it's just an add-on. It's really the guts about how we proceed. So just to the chair, I'd like to hear from you. We have Commissioner Chura, we have Commissioner, we have Chief, Commissioner Mason, so they have some thoughts on that. If not, I express mine. Heard from you guys.
I mean, we just both said, definitely that is something that
I don't
we
think
need.
your mic's on.
Sure, and I both just said that is something that we definitely need to look at in coming future. Right now, this month, we're not looking to do it. Hopefully within the next 60 days,
It's December.
we can start looking at even bringing in a new ED. That should be that person's purpose, to put some type of strategy together to set our direction, our goals, and what we want to accomplish. So we're all in agreement. That is something that we need to establish.
To the chair, Commissioner Mason, I wholeheartedly agree with you. The next 60 days, I do think that should happen once we have our executive director, that they should hit the ground running, working on that strategic plan.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everybody that I think that once we have an executive director, I think that we should send out the RFP, which is, I think, what
Yeah, it's already been
Dariette is
drafted.
saying.
It's ready to go.
Yeah.
We're not stalling on this. We just don't have the capacity at the moment. I mean, we have to be realistic. In the here and now, like you said, December, it can't happen, no matter how bad we want it to. We just don't have the capacity at the moment. But we're hopeful that we will have an executive director very soon, and they can hit the ground running. They already have the RFP. No one has to draft it or write it. It already exists. It's ready to go.
So I think that, the question I had asked is, would it be helpful for us, it sounds like there was a lack of clarity, and if there's a lack of clarity within us, then there's a lack of clarity within the public as well. And so I think it's a great thing to highlight of what are the things that we are going to look at. And I think what I hear you saying, Judge Nelson, is that through the strategic planning process, that might change. Which I think, in a strategic planning process, I imagine that we, in identifying the overall goals of the commission, I don't know how granular it'll get in terms of like what each committee is doing, but I think that that's a great thing for us to hold in terms of when we have a strategic planning firm, that we say, hey, one of the things we might want to look at is one of our large responsibilities is reviewing discipline and holding evidentiary hearings. And so that's probably something we should have integrated into a strategic plan. In terms of what I was wondering is if it would be helpful to write down maybe what has been unspoken about what types of cases we have been identifying and are looking at so far. And I'd be happy to write that out and send it to the committee for us to review, to potentially share with the commission so that we can all be on the same page. But also, if we want to table that and wait until we go through a strategic planning process or have a new ED, that's fine as well. But I wanted to offer that.
To the chair, even though if we bring in a company or whatever, they have to talk to us. We have to put what it is that we would like to see, what our public would like to see, what the officers would like to see. They just can't go out there and run and put something together and we're going to follow it.
Yeah.
That's not how that goes. So if you want to start putting something together, and then when the ED come in, they have their mindset, then we all come together and say, okay, this is what our mission, these are our goals, this is what we want to accomplish, and these are the timelines that we want to do it. That they're to be working with us. We're not to be working for them. So I just want to make sure that we understand that process.
That is correct.
Okay.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah, and sort of get to the end of what I was concerned about. We find ourselves at this point in a position where we have limited staff. We find ourselves in the same point, or the commission found itself, I wasn't part of it then, in the same point last year, where we were in the sort of the same little, the same sort of gray area, because we had to relax a quorum for a period of time, and now we lack a staff at the same time. So the benefit of a strategic plan is it helps you survive these moments when you have issues or incapacity like we're facing now. And that's why it's very important, because where we may be diminished in terms of our ability, the strategic plan still is in place, and will help us identify those steps that we need to take when we find ourselves in the position that we're in right now. So all of that sort of goes hand in hand, and I guess we're now sort of repeating ourselves, but it seems like we're all in agreement.
Through the chair,
Consensus.
through the chair, the recommendations that I would make is we don't have to sit still. I would say rely on the guidance from the committee chairs to determine what are some things that, committee members should be focused on. We did have a previous 18-month framework that our previous executive director created. There are still a lot of goals on that 18-month framework that have not been accomplished or completed yet. I would say look at those. That has work laid out for every committee that you guys could look at and begin using that as guidance until we get this strategic plan up and going. There were talks with Alex, Nordine, Chair Adams, Commissioner Tara Coleman, who is the chair of the Rules Committee. And she felt that, our kind of internal plan, until we have this firm to do our strategic plan, the number one thing that we should focus on is kind of fine tuning our operations, which is why I asked her to start working on our rules manual, our operations manual, just start working on the drafting of that. And getting commissioner feedback as she's doing that. So it's not like we don't have things to do. There are still things to do, and we are functional without that strategic plan because there's still so much work to do. Until we get it formally, affirm and get it formally going in that professional manner, there are still things we can do on our own. Because as Commissioner Nelson said, there are talents on the commission. We all have skills that we can add to keeping this work going in the meantime. So I think just, her focusing on the operations manual, focus on accountability, kind of helping Commissioner Marrero Benito with, figuring out, identifying these cases that should be the focus. Just kind of relying on the committee chairs to determine, hey, how could I best be of service? Always community outreach, engaging with community. That's always a plus, going to the department, seeing, what's going on, talking to the officers, getting feedback from the officers. We can do that without a strategic plan in the moment while we're waiting.
To the chair. So there's 9 new members, and this 18-month strategic planning that was put out before us. We are in need of that plan so that we can review it to see what it is. We can revise it, we can add to, but since it's already there, I think that is something that should be passed to the new members.
Okay, if you don't have it, I could definitely send it out to everyone. And everything on there is just directly related to the consent decree. It's like directly pulled out of the consent decree. So it's not like it was specific to that past group of commissioners. It's, if there's 2 commissions from now, if we're not out of the consent decree, it's still compliant because those are, all the tasks are pulled from the consent decree. So I'll send that out tonight or tomorrow morning.
Okay. It's but within the next week, if you could get it out to us.
No problem.
Yeah, so in terms of next steps for this committee, I think that one of the things that our previous plan was to try to get this database done. It is pretty time intensive and without having staff support, and also with some of the concerns that were raised about if cases are more than 6 months old, are we able to discipline officers? I'm going to suggest that what we do is just look at the last couple months and just start doing that. And so I think that, we can, in January, set some meetings of the Brady Biglio work group and the discipline work group, and just look at and just start kind of month by month. And then, through those work groups, we can identify cases to then bring to this committee. So does that sound like a good plan to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, is there any further discussion or any items that people would like to bring? Okay. Well, with that, we will adjourn.
Public comment.
Oh, sorry. Yes, there's another. We have some members here. Is there anyone who wants to make a public comment? No? You're back. Okay. Thank you for being here. And thanks to our officers for being here as well. And with that, we will adjourn. Have a great holiday, everybody.
See you next time.
We said